Kicking things off at numero uno is wrangling up a couple of swing dings. Loader's default secondary skill, the Grapple Fist, fires her gauntlet forward, pulling her towards any objects or enemies that it first makes contact with. Her alternate secondary, the Spiked Fist, retains the same grappling ability, which pulls her towards the nearest large enemy or object, but with the added bonus of dealing 320% damage. One thing to keep in mind though with the Spiky Fist is that for small victim weight enemies such as wisps, beetles, and lemurians, they are brought to you instead so you can give them that up close wombo combo. Because of this, I pretty much always recommend taking this Bad Larry over that Pacifist Grapple Fist Garbaccio, because instead of pillow hands, you can bully those featherweight division plebes, dishing out more long-range knuckle sandwich activity than a Quiznos worker who accidentally ate the gum fruit. And while it's always nice to deal a little additional damage with those extendo arms, the true benefit of this ability comes into play when you embrace your inner Sasagio, enlist with the Scout Regiment, and start taking to the skies, using it to launch yourself across the entire map in one go, and swing dinging your way to that tasty zoot. With this one ability alone, Loader is by far the most mobile character right off the rip, and in a game where the clock and more importantly the difficulty is always ticking, the ability to zoom around the map, escape any sticky situation, and zoot up and find the teleporter quickly is absolutely massive. And most busted part of all is you get this level of mobility on Stage Uno with absolutely zero downside, because I forgot to mention that along with this S tier default mobility, Loader has the most broken OP passive ability in the game. Absolutely zilcho fall damage. That's right, when confronted with that dork Isaac Newton, Loader says freak the ops and gives Gravity the old one finger salute. The briggity braziness of this ability gets even brazier if you play on Eclipse, as Loader's passive ability is basically a cheat code, making the fatal fall damage modifier feel about as useful as a snooze button on a smoke alarm. This means you can get as riggedy reckless as you want, and also that Loader has a built-in pillar skip regardless of the items you pick up for every single run, which is absolutely invaluable no matter which difficulty you're playing on. And if that wasn't enough for you, if you want to take Loader's mobility to the stratosphere, make sure to keep those beepers peeled for the backup mag. This white item grants you an additional charge of your secondary ability for every stack, so if you really want to get those spidey senses tingling, then picking up some of these bad boys is your ticket. Lastly, if these abilities weren't busted enough for you, keep in mind that even if you miss the initial punch grapple thingy, that as long as it doesn't make contact with an enemy or the environment, it doesn't waste the charge of this. So feel free to spam those extendo arms more than a min main at a college Smash Bros tournament. Tip numero dos is the Momentum Mori. Loader's default utility skill, the Charged Gauntlet, is a chargeable attack which, when released, sends Loader hurtling towards her enemies with a devastating piercing punch that deals between 600% and 2700% damage. On the other hand, her alternate utility skill, the Thunder Gauntlet, functions similarly, but instead of piercing through enemies, she stops after making initial contact with the first enemy, dealing 2100% damage to that initial sucker who gets hit, and then delivering a conical shock that deals 1000% damage to nearby enemies, rocking them down to Electric Avenue. Additionally, one major thing to note about the Thunder Gauntlet is that it fires automatically after reaching full charge, while the Charge Gauntlet can be held at full charge indefinitely and only used when you release the button. Although at first glance it might look like Thunder Gauntlet does more overall damage between the initial punch and the conical shock, the piercing ability easily catches up as more and more enemies begin to spawn in and start to line up more conveniently than my first triple collateral on free-for-all. Oh baby, a triple! Oh yeah! The Charge Gauntlet becomes even more busted when you consider the fact that every enemy hit by the piercing punch is impacted by Loader's heavy passive, which increases the damage done by the punch depending on Loader's current velocity. On the other hand, only the first enemy hit by the Thunder Gauntlet gets this effect. And furthermore, by having the freedom to control when to release the fully charged punch, the Momentum Mori tech synergizes perfectly with tip numero uno and Loader's grappling abilities. These downsides make it real difficult to recommend picking the Thunder Gauntlet over the Charged Gauntlet for Loader's kit, because not only does the Charged Gauntlet make you more mobile than a small coastal town in Alabama, but with this bad equipped, you can dish out more damage than Russell Crowe and his trusty tugboat Tugger on their fighting around the world tour. So in short, don't take the Thunder Gauntlet unless you're on Team Starbelly Sneech. However, it doesn't stop there. If you want to become the ultimate gauntlet gladiator and take those damage levels to the Maximus Decimus Meridius, make sure to pick up the Paul's Goat Hoof and energy drink, which boosts your overall movement speed and sprinting speed respectively. These two items make it easy cheesy to max out that momentum damage bonus. Next, you can add in the crowbar to the mix to instantly increase your damage by 75% to enemies above 90% health. And if you really want to snuff out any thought of rebellion by the barbarian hordes of Petrichor 5, make sure to amass together the Army of the North and the Felix Legion of the South. These two allow an additional ice and flame blast respectively, triggered by your Falcon Punch, and allows you to lay down the law as a loyal servant to the true Emperor, Marcus Aurelianite. And if after all of this you are still not entertained, then keep on the lookout for the Hard Light Afterburner, which gives an additional 2 charges of your utility skill and lets Loader truly unload that Colosseum clobbering. For tip numero tres, we have the Ripleys, believe it or not. Loader's primary ability, the Knuckle Boom, delivers a series of close-range melee attacks for 320% damage. And just in case Loader wasn't overpowered enough, this ability also gives you a temporary overshield that is generated anytime those Power Loader grabbers make contact with the faces of those wannabe Xenomorph plebes. This ability is basically a free Topaz Brucci Pro Max model, and because of this fact, not only allows you but encourages you to get up close and personal with Possibility of Precipitation's very own Sigourney Weaver and duke it out mano-y-mano with those alien jabronis. Speaking of the devil, the Robrucci synergizes extremely well with Loader's Scrap Barrier ability, since it grants additional temporary overshields on enemy kill, which allows for more double dipping than Nabisco's annual holiday party. To absolutely juice this overshield to the max, pick up the Aegis Red item, which grants overshields for any healing you receive past full. By pairing the Aegis with either the Leeching Seed, which heals you as you deal damage to enemies, or the Monster Tooth, which drops healing orbs once enemies are dead, or even better, both, you are well on your way to an absolutely easy dub. Finally, to kick those arms into overdrive, look out for the Soldier's Syringe, Mocha Joka, and Predatory Instincts, which all help improve her attack speed and will have Loader swiping it more than a mid-morning Dora the Explorer marathon on the Nickelodeon back in 2007. Tip numero cuatro is the pie in the sky. Loader's default special skill, the M551 Pylon, throws one of these floating pylon gens that hovers and zaps up to 6 nearby enemies for 100% damage. This Bad Larry is a fine ranged addition to Loader's mostly melee exclusive collection and is guaranteed to give Stage 1 Wisps and Beetles a tougher time navigating through electrical barriers than my 4-year-old brain trying to figure out the Vermilion City gym puzzle back during my early 2000s illiteracy arc. I don't even want to admit how many hours I spent mashing my Game Boy Color's buttons trying to get to this cargo short wearing Dolph Lundgren looking fool, only for his Voltorb to explode and send me back into the nearest Poke Center. As I mentioned before, the Pylon is a great ranged option and offers some pretty solid crowd control for Loader in the early stages of a run, especially with airborne enemies, by just setting it out there and forgetting it, as it zaps any baddies that venture a little too close to these electrified pretty patties. However, the best thing about the Pylons is the fact that they McDouble as an impromptu rocket launch station, as they can also be grappled. With a well-placed pie in the sky, you give Loader instantaneous access to nearly any part of the map, as well as an easy way to quickly build maximum momentum for your gauntlet attacks. If you want to take this to the next level though, make sure to pick up the Lysate Cell Void item, which gives you an additional charge of your special skill for each stack. With a couple of these in tow, you can send out your army of electric Borgers, but be warned, you can only have 3 active Pylons at a time, and throwing out any more than this will replace the oldest one with a new one. And finally, tip numero 5 is the Launcho Libre. We already previously discussed all the benefits of Loader's default special skill, but if you're feeling like a bit of an hombre religioso and want to don your stretchy pants, Loader's alternate special ability, the Thunder Slam, is the signature move for you. This ability has Loader slamming down from the top rope, crashing into the ground, and sending out a shockwave that deals 1000% damage and stuns any nearby enemies. If you truly want to be the best and take your Lucha Libre talents to the stratosphere, keep your eyes peeled for the H3AD 5T V2, aka the Head Stompies. This red item increases your jump height and allows you to hold the interact key while airborne to come slamming down to the earth, dealing between 1000 and 10,000% damage, depending on the height in which you fall from. One other thing to note is it also grants immunity to fall damage, but this is not something that concerns Loader, but is good to know for the other survivors. With this item in tow, you can combine it with the Swing Ding and or the Pie in the Sky techs to launch yourself up higher than a Mexican cliff eagle nest and come raining down from the heavens. Combine these bad boys with the crowbar and bands and you have yourself some true eagle powers with some of the highest damage outputs in the game that will have Mithrix making a beeline for the exit. And now it's time for a little bonus. Here we have Loader's Loaded Loadout, which is gonna be just me rapid fire going through some of the best items that synergize well with Loader's abilities and kit. Kicking things off with the white items, we've got the Focus Crystal, which gives you a damage bonus to any nearby enemies. This synergizes particularly well with Loader because the majority of her kit is melee attacks, and you're getting that bonus damage on all of those massive punches. Next up is the Soldier's Syringe and Mocha Joka, which increase your attack speed and movement speed respectively. These are great for just dishing out more damage as well as bolstering Loader's velocity in order to get that Momentum Mori maximum output. And speaking of momentum, while we're on the topic, I already mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning it again. The Paul's Goat Hoof and Energy Drink are fantastic items for maximizing the heavy potential as well. Next up is the Gasoline, which adds a chance for a spreadable fire on every hit, and this is great especially early on for that area of effect type damage and clearing out hordes of enemies once you send yourself flying through them with your Falcon Punch. Of course, we gotta mention the backup mag once again, because having an additional charge of your secondary ability, aka the grapple, is truly invaluable in the hands of Loader for mobility and zooming around the map. And finally, rounding things off for the Blanco items is the crowbar, which gives you an additional 75% damage to any enemies above 90% health. Pair this bad Larry up with the bands and it's game over. And since we've already bopped on over into the green section, the next major player that you should be looking out for is the Shuriken. These are particularly useful if you're not rocking the pylon, as it gives Loader a ranged option in her kit and is also great for proccing bands at a distance. Of course, any green list is not complete without mentioning the holy trifecta of proc chains, the Will-o'-the-Wisp, ATG Missile, and Ukulele, which if you pick up all three, just turn this game into straight easy mode. In addition to being able to be procced by your punches, the pylons can also proc these effects, and it gets absolutely nutty, especially if you're rocking that 3-piece with the Lysate cells. Moving on to the red items, we've got the Frost Relic, which upon killing enemies summons an ice storm around you, which deals even more damage to enemies and grows every time you kill additional enemies. This is fantastic because it surrounds your character, and since you're getting up close and personal with Loader anyway, it's just absolutely busted, especially in combination with the Focus Crystal. Similar to the Frost Relic, the Unstable Tesla Coil surrounds your character with an electric aura that zaps any nearby enemies, acting pretty damn similar to the Pylon. Once again, this synergizes fantastic with Loader's close range playstyle and the Focus Crystal as well. And once again, I already mentioned these two, but the Hard Light Afterburner, which gives you an additional 2 charges of your utility skill, as well as the Head Stompies, are absolutely busted on Loader and give her some of the highest damage output in the entire game. And lastly, moving on to some orange equipment items that you should be keeping those peepers peeled for. The Ocular HUD, which grants you 8 seconds of guaranteed critical hits, is great for popping right before you unleash your charged gauntlet, giving you a guaranteed double damage wallop. The Primordial Cube, which creates a black hole effect and sucks nearby enemies into a concentrated area, is also great with the Piercing Punch because you're just lining them all up for the ultimate collateral smackdown. And lastly, the Crowdfunder and Royal Capacitor are arguably the 2 most busted equipment items in the game, and they're even better on Loader because they add an additional straight OP ranged weapon to her arsenal. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Let me know if I missed anything or any of your Loader tips down below. Thanks for tuning on in, and we'll catch you next time. Adios, amigos.